All right. So if you would, so I have a question for you to start out with is why do we assemble? Okay. So if you would turn with me in Hebrews 10, it's one of my favorite verses on why do we get together? Why are we here this evening actually? Because I value the time with each and every one of you. So it's Hebrews 10, verse 23, 24, and 25. So and it says, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more, as you see the day approaching. It just reminds me of, and I don't remember who the speaker was, but it reminds me a little bit of Rally. At Rally, I think he had a couple of kids come up and had glasses of milk. And they added, some of that good Nesquik to it, right? And he had them stir it up. So that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to stir up, right, our good works, right? We're supposed to exhort each other. How are you doing? Did you talk to anyone about Jesus? I find myself actually talking more about the weather and different things, which isn't bad. But we're supposed to encourage each other, right? To reveal a friend, and that's our Jesus, right? All right, so as many of you know, I have been called by God to be at home this coming year and not go back to teaching in the public school anyway, right? Because you moms, you know that the teaching never ends. Right. And grandmas, right? Ooh, yeah. So I find myself kind of evaluating what I'm doing even this summer, right? And I'm thinking, man, is it worth it to fuss over these chickens? Is it, just different things? Is it worth it? Is it what do we need to be doing, right? Well, it just seems like the word from pastor and the word focus keeps coming up. Well, who are we supposed to focus on? Right? I bet you know the answer to that. But before we do that, before we answer that question, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'd like you to turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. So I'm going to go back. First Corinthians chapter 3, starting in verse 9. Okay, so in verse 9 it says, "For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field. You are God's building. According to the grace of God, which was given me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation and another builds on it. But let each one take heed how he builds on it. For no other foundation can anyone lay than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become clear, for the day will declare it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test each one's work, of what sort it is. If anyone's work which he has built on it endures, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, yet so as through fire. I don't know, these verses kind of, just reminded me, to do what's important. Someday our work is going to be judged to see, is it worthy of a reward from God or is it not? And that's something each person has to answer on their own, obviously. But we can help each other to move in the right direction. Okay. All right. So before we go on to the next few verses, I don't know, over these last few years, I've actually struggled. I don't know if you've noticed that when I lead worship and stuff, with sometimes seeing it clearly. Maybe it's just, right? Oh, you're getting older, so you're, and it's like, no, remember, we're the healed, right? So there's this struggle, right? And so when you can actually see, it's amazing. So I have this little quote, right? Because, right, your eyes have to focus, right? So if your vision is out of focus, it's extremely difficult to complete the littlest task. It's kind of embarrassing, but maybe you can understand. But Hannah actually asked me to help her with her hair once. and so I was going to be nice and help her with her hair. And she had to undo what I had done later because I couldn't see it properly to do it properly. Right? So it's like the littlest task, you can't even do it properly, let alone with excellence. Like if you want to do it like the best. So we have to focus. That's what I'm trying to get at. Get that? We got to focus. Okay. So like if we're going to reveal a friend to people as we're walking down the street, it has to be, we've got to be thinking of it, because so often I'm good at always like evaluating myself after something happens. But at the time, I'm like, well, why didn't I say that? I should have said this. Oh, why didn't I think of it? Oh, I should have prayed with them, or just a million things come to you and you're like, oh. So I hope I can encourage you, right? We got to focus, right? And on who or what are we focusing? So let's turn to Hebrews 12. Hebrews 12. This comes after the great, right? The champions of faith, right? Chapter, right? Hebrews 11:1 is right. But right? It starts in chapter 11 was what I'm trying to say. Sorry. And so beginning at the first verse in Hebrews chapter 12. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. You have not yet resisted to bloodshed, striving against sin. I guess I just like to continue there because, I could have my pity party and say, oh, this life is so hard, God, right? Right? You're tired at the end of the day or something, and it's so hard, and you just want to be weary and discouraged. And this verse is telling us, come on, you got this, right? That cloud of witnesses is like cheering us on. Go, 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 right? Right? So we want to focus, right, on Jesus. That's who we want to focus on. Because he is the author. He is the author of our faith. And he is the finisher. The Alpha and Omega, right?
Yep.
Awesomeness. All right, so we want to lay aside, right? Actually, before we go on to that, let's go back and look at verse 1. And it says, right, that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And just to clarify, those witnesses are the faithful who did not receive the promise. Okay? But they're encouraging us to continue on, right? Keep on. So if we go back to Hebrews 11 and verse 2, well, maybe we should back up to verse 1. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. So these are the great cloud of witnesses are those elders that obtained a great testimony, right? The hall of faith, right? All the incredible people like Gideon and Samson, David and Samuel, all those people. I just can't imagine that they're, right? We're surrounded by that great cloud of those people. Wow. We should never be discouraged, right? Okay. So if you would look then now to verse 13 in Hebrews 11. Verse 13 in Hebrews 11, and it says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. So I'm trying to encourage you here. All right, so now the next part is looking back to Hebrews 12. Okay. Right. So we talked about the cloud of witnesses, right? Now we're going to look at the next little phrase. And it says, let us lay aside every weight. Okay. And the sin which so easily ensnares us. So lately, some of the time, right? It's the word distractions, right? There are lots of distractions that can shift our focus, right? Take it away from what we're actually looking at, right? And this distractions could literally be someone needing help, and so you got to help them, or maybe, but it could be sin too. It could be something that's distracting you that you need to get rid of, right? Because it says, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. When I looked in the cross reference here in my Bible, it referred to, well, actually, I had a question about distractions. So, is it someone who really needs care? Is that distraction that you think is so important, is it necessary? Is it, do you need to do that right now? Or right? Is it lust of the eyes? Because, right, you're shopping and, oh, I have to have that. I just want that, right? But is that something that God wants us to have? Right? Are we keeping our focus? So I was really encouraged by this verse. At first, it's kind of discouraging. Just hang with me. And then it gets encouraging. So turn to 1 John 2. 1 John chapter 2. And verses 15 through 17. So, right, we're not going to get ensnared. Okay, so it says here, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever. Hallelujah. We will abide forever, right? Because we're going to walk in his will. We're going to walk in the light as he is in the light, right? Which reminds me, so I'm going to skip around a little bit, but over this summer, in the middle of the night, we'll hear this sound, and it'll sound like a cough, and it's in our trees. It'll go, but it's scary because it's in, right? And so I've had the boys out there looking after this thing, right? Come on, let's go. Well, you go. I'm not going to go. You have the flashlight. Well, you have the gun, right? And we're pretty sure. I think it's a fox. Okay. Well, we've been raising little chicks. We had to start over. That's another story. But anyway, so we have, right? We're trying to get this fox. So then there was one night, and I know Clayton wasn't there. So it's Evan and I. I'm like, Evan, if you don't go, I'm going by myself. Again, we hear this fox, so we're going to go out. We're going to go find the fox. I said, we're going to remove him from existence because he doesn't belong in our, he doesn't need to be snacking on anything that we want to keep. So anyway, we managed to see the fox. Okay. He just so happened to be in the lights we could turn the lights on the semi, and we could see him, and he's on our bale. Like he's on top of it. Like he owns the place. And our dog is not doing anything about it. And our dog was distracted. He was not focusing, We'd sick him, and he's jumping in the grass over here, and it's like, so Evan had the gun, and he's like, well, where's the flashlight? I said, I didn't bring a flashlight. We have the lights in the semi. Why do we need a flashlight? Well, it just so happened it cast enough of a shadow where he couldn't see through the scope. So now if you can't focus, right, and if you can't see where your target is, It's pointless. There's no, you can't.
That's good.
Can't do it, right?
That's good.
Because you can say ready, aim, and fire, but if you don't know where you're aiming, and if you don't, so you're really not ready because you can't see.
Right.
Because you can't see in the darkness. So this is why Hebrews 12 is telling us, throw off that weight, because you got to focus on Jesus. You got to focus on where he's leading us, right? We decided to follow Jesus. And so we've got to walk in the light. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to see what we need to focus on. So I was just thinking of is it the metaphor? How do I want to say this, right? with like shooting or something, right? So if you're trying to aim at something, is there something bothering you, right? You're trying to focus, right? You're trying to focus. Well, maybe there's something literally bugging you, right? Right? Lately, got to do the mosquito dance, even if you spray yourself and you're in the garden picking something, right? You there's something bothering you. So then it's hard to focus on what you're doing. So if there's something, cast off that weight that so easily entangles. Cast it off. I'm telling myself, cast it off so that you can focus on what you need to be doing, what God has called us to do, right? So, but maybe you need to deal with an offense. Like I was listening to Miles City a little bit on Sunday nights, and maybe there's something that you've allowed to stay in you that is keeping you from focusing again. So again, that's something that you got to reflect on. Is there something that I need to do? Do I need to go to someone and apologize? Do I need to ask them for forgiveness? Maybe there are just some of those very simple things that God is nudging you to do. And so you need to just do those things, right? But maybe it's just bugs, Maybe it's just the evil one, right? Maybe he's just bugging you and he's telling you lies because that's all he can do, right? So the last part of John 8 and verse 44, it's Jesus talking. And I'd like to start, let's turn there. John 8, verse 44. Right? And I believe Jesus is. The Pharisees are trying to catch him, right? But in the latter part of verse 44, right? It's talking about the evil one. It says, he was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. Man, just think of that. Not even no truth. Wow. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. So maybe you've got the devil trying to tell you, get you off focus and say, well, are you really supposed to do that? It's always like a lot of times a question. Well, they don't really want to listen to you anyway because you don't even sound good. They probably don't listen to you because, just you can think of a myriad of things, right? And it's a lie. So you need to I'm just going to quote my mom. My mom would say, well, you just got to tell him, get thee behind me, Satan. And that's the end of it, right? Just don't let him have control because he doesn't have it anyway, right? We've been purchased. So we've been redeemed from that. All right. So a minute here. Yes. So we have to have the light. Okay. Where are we sitting? Okay. All right. So I'd like to just go back to Hebrews 12. And we're running this race because we've thrown away the weight, the heavy sin. We cast our cares off on Jesus, right? Because we're looking to him, because he's the one who authored our faith. And now he's going to be the finisher. I just think of a finish, right? You think of a finish, right? He's going to finish something, right? And I don't know why I thought of this. Maybe I was hungry or something. I don't know. It says, right? So let's say mom makes you a cake and she takes it out of the oven and she says, we have to let it cool. Okay, right? So that means don't stick your finger in the cake, right? You got to let it cool, right? And now your mouth is watering. But she says you have to wait because it isn't frosted. My mother, my own mom, she would make a chocolate sheath cake with frosting, like that shiny stuff that looks like gloss, a nice glaze. And those were the brownies that I grew up with. So you see, some of us, now think of our faith, right? Jesus is the author and finisher, right? When the cake is done, it's all finished with that nice glaze on the top. So some of us in our walk, right? Some of us, don't take this the wrong way, but some of us are half-baked, right? We're still in the oven. Others are just getting stirred up, right? Yeah. We're just getting stirred up. Some are getting frosted, right? They're getting a nice glaze, right?
That's good.
Right? But we want to remember, who is that? That's Jesus Christ. He is the author and finisher of our faith. Okay? We're going to end tonight with singing a song. But before we get to that, I looked up the person who wrote this song. Okay. So the song is Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus, right? So we're focusing on Jesus. I don't know. I just woke up the other morning and I think the Spirit of God is telling me. So that's what we're going to do. But before we sing that, it was written by Helen H. Lemmel. Okay. And this is just so interesting. So I don't know if you can bear with me. Maybe it's a long thing to read. Okay. But Helen Lemmel, I looked it up. And she wrote this song in 1922. So it's an old song. Unless you're in England, right? Then right, it has to be hundreds of years. But anyway, okay. She was inspired by the life of a missionary, and that missionary's name was Lilias Trotter. Okay. And so this Helen based Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus from a poem that this Lilias Trotter wrote. Okay. Lilias Trotter, maybe I should tell you a little bit about her. Okay, so Helen got the idea of this song from a poem she read that Lilius had written. And this Lilius, originally from London, England, she was a very talented artist. And I think people were willing to send her off to art school and all kinds of things because she was a very talented artist. But she was called, she didn't get distracted by that because she was called to be a missionary. And she did so, even though nobody, it sounds like nobody supported her. So she went to Africa by herself, and she lived among the nationals in the hiddenness of the desert for 40 years. This Lilius Trotter. Okay. So she wrote this poem that inspired Helen to write Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. Okay. And the poem is called, I looked it up. I just can't imagine, like, God knows everything, right? Okay, ready? The name of this poem, right? I just looked it up. Well, not today, but, within the past few days. Focused, a story and a song. And then the poem, like, to me, really isn't a poem because it's not a rhyme. All right. So I don't know if you want to hear the whole thing because it's kind of long, but it might give us a really good word picture. So here is Focused, a story and a song by Lilius Trotter. It was in a little wood in early morning. The sun was climbing behind a steep cliff in the east, and its light was flooding nearer and nearer and then making pools among the trees. Suddenly, from a dark corner of purple, brown stems and tawny moss, there shone a great golden star. It was just a dandelion and half withered, but it was full face to the sun and had caught into its heart all the glory it could hold and was shining so radiantly that the dew that lay on it still made a perfect aureole around its head. And it seemed to talk, standing there, to talk about the possibility of making the very best of these lives of ours. For if the sun of righteousness has risen upon our hearts, there is an ocean of grace and love and power lying all around us, an ocean to which all earthly light is but a drop, and it is ready to transfigure us as the sunshine transfigured the dandelion, and on the same condition that we stand full face to God. Gathered up, focused lives, intent on one aim, Christ. These are the lives on which God can concentrate blessedness. It is all for all by a law as unvarying as any law that governs the material universe. We see the principle shadowed in the trend of science, the telephone and the wireless in the realm of sound, the use of radium and the ultraviolet rays in the realm of light. All these work by gathering into focus currents and waves that dispersed cannot serve us. In every branch of learning and workmanship, the tendency of these days is to specialize, to take up one point and follow it to the uttermost. And Satan knows well the power of concentration. If a soul is likely to get under the sway of an inspiration, quote, this one thing I do, he will turn all his energies to bring in side interests that will shatter the gathering intensity. And they lie all around these interests. Never has it been so easy to live in a dozen good, harmless worlds at once. Art, music, social science, games, motoring, the following of some profession, and so on. And between them, we run the risk of drifting about. The good hiding the best even more effectually than it could be hidden by downright frivolity with its smothered heartache at its own emptiness. I'm sorry, it's kind of long. Bear with me. Okay. But there's a point to this. Okay. It is easy to find out whether our lives are focused, and if so, where the focus lies. Where do our thoughts settle when consciousness comes back in the morning? Where do they swing back when the pressure is off during the day? Does this test not give the clue? Then dare to have it out with God. And after all, that is the shortest way. Dare to lay bare your whole life and being before Him and ask Him to show you whether or not all is focused on Christ and His glory. Dare to face the fact that unfocused good, and useful as it may seem, it will prove to have failed its purpose. What does this focusing mean? Study the matter and you will see that it means two things: gathering in all that can be gathered and letting the rest drop. The working of any lens, microscope, telescope, camera, will show you this. The lens of your own eye, in the room where you are sitting, as clearly as any other. Look at the window bars, and beyond is only a shadow. Look through at the distance, and it is the bars that turn into ghosts. You have to choose which you will fix your gaze upon and let the other go. Are we ready for a cleavage to be wrought through the whole range of our lives, like the division long ago at the taking of Jericho, the division between things that could be passed through the fire of consecration into the treasury of the Lord, and the things that, unable to bide the fire, must be destroyed? All aims, all ambitions, all desires, all pursuits, shall we dare to drop them if they cannot be gathered sharply and clearly into the focus of this one thing I do? Will it not make life narrow, this focusing? In a sense, it will. Just as the mountain path grows narrower, for it matters more and more the higher we go where we set our feet. But there is always, as it narrows, a wider and wider outlook and purer, clearer air. Narrow as Christ's life was narrow, this is our aim. Narrow as regards self-seeking, broad as the love of God to all around. Is there anything to fear in that? And in the narrowing and focusing, the channel will be prepared for God's power. Like the stream hemmed between the rock beds that wells up in a spring, like the burning glass that gathers the rays into an intensity that will kindle fire. It is worthwhile to let God see what He can do with these lives of ours when to live is Christ. How do we bring things to a focus in the world of optics? Not by looking at the things to be dropped, but by looking at the one point that is to be brought out. Turn full your soul's vision to Jesus and look at Him. And a strange dimness will come over all that is apart from Him. And the divine, a straight, which means attraction, I guess. The divine estrate by which God's saints are made, even in this 20th century, right, because it was written quite a while ago, will lay hold of you. For He is worthy to have all there is to be had in the heart that he has died to win. I know it was pretty long, but I thought if I leave something out, then you might not quite get the full it. Okay. All right, so we're going to sing a closing song, and it's Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. Okay? And I hope it encourages you to do just that. Turn your eyes on Jesus. He's the one that deserves it all. All the glory, everything. Just hang on a sec here. There we go. In the key of D. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Oh, soul, are you weary and troubled? No light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior, and a life more abundant and free. Your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Through death into life everlasting, he passed and we follow him there. Over us sin no man has dominion, for more than conquers we are. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. His word shall not fail you, he promised. Believe him and all will be well. Then go to a world that is dying, his perfect salvation to tell. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in in the highest glory. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate this chance. Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you for joining us for this service.